Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are doing my somewhat belated October wrap up, but I'm very excited to talk about these books because I really enjoyed the vast majority of them, and it's always fun to talk about books that you are enjoying and that you want to recommend to other people. So hopefully you get some good spooky October seasonal reading recommendations out of this. And we're going to be talking about 10 books in total. And the first 4 I'm going to be going over kind of quickly because they are the graphic novels that I read in my graphic novel reading vlog. I will link that down below if you want a little bit more information about them, but this is just going to be a really quick synopsis and review. So the first 2 that I read in that video are The Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch. These are done by Bree, Paulsen, and they're published by Quill Tree Books. These are part of a series, and I do think the series is going to continue based on where Garlic and the Witch, which is the second one, left off. These are so adorable and heartwarming and autumnal. Let me show you a little bit of the art style in one of them. So just look how seasonal and gorgeous that is. It's got very like cartoony vibes, but the color palette is very autumnal, so we love to see it. And I absolutely love these. I gave both of them 5 stars, but this one I do think is my favorite between the 2. It's just more time with the characters that you love, and the main character is Garlic, which is a little garlic bulb that has been brought to life by a witch, and she goes on different experiences and adventures that stretch her in different ways, and it's very heartwarming. I love it. Highly recommend both of these, and they're great seasonal reading. Then next we have the Sance Tea Party. This is by Reimena, and it's published by RH Graphic. This one is sort of like a coming of age novel. It's about a girl down here who is in this transitional phase in life where a lot of her friends are starting to enjoy things that maybe are considered more adult, quote unquote, starting to be more interested in relationships and celebrities and gossip and things like that. And she doesn't feel like that's where her interest lies, and definitely wants to still be using her imagination and playing and kind of doing make-believe, but feels alone in that. So she makes friends with a ghost and they start playing together. It's about this idea of like what it means to grow up, what it means to feel like an outsider, like you're different, and how you can keep that childlike wonder alive even through aging and adulthood. So it is also very heartwarming. I liked this one less than the previous 2. I felt like the story was a little bit too drawn out for me. It could have been shorter, but overall the art style is very cute. I really enjoyed it. There's a little peek of what's in there, and would still recommend this. I think only in the comparison to the other 2, because I love them so much, did it let me down just slightly. And then we also have Lights. This is by Brenna Thummler, and it's published by Oni Press, and it's the finale to the Sheets graphic novel series, which follows a ghost named Wendell, who's the one in the middle. And this last installment is mainly following Wendell. We're getting a lot about his backstory, and he's trying to investigate how he died. So he knows the general circumstances of how he passed away, but doesn't know specifics and would like to learn more. And so that's the journey that you go on. I definitely enjoyed this, but I do feel like the first one in the series is definitely still my favorite, and then I think this is my second favorite. I really enjoy Wendell as a character, so I liked that it focused on him a little bit more. And again, stunning graphics. I love the color palette that this uses. So it's like pinks, purples, blues, and yellows, and it's amazing. I absolutely love it. Would highly recommend it for the art alone. Okay, now we're gonna get into some of the novels that I read. And the first one was also in that vlog, and it is The Twiford Code by Janice Hallett. This edition is published by Viper because I got this from the UK. And Janice Hallett is well known at this point for writing mixed media mystery novels. So you can see these ones are audio files, and that's what the story is set in. I listened to this via audio, and I really think that is the way to go with this book because it is audio files. I think some of the little bits that say like the quality of the audio, the date, all those types of things are easier listened to than having to read, at least for me. This had a lot of twists and turns in it. It's very action-packed, which I think is in contrast to The Appeal, because The Appeal was a little bit slower paced. The action doesn't really start until halfway through the book, and I think that was a criticism that a lot of people had, and this one is way more fast-paced and kind of immediately gets you into the action. It's really interesting to try and figure out the Twiford Code, which is a code that some people feel was hidden in this fictional author Edith Twyford's novels. And there's a teacher who is covering detention for a class one day, and she stumbles upon maybe what might be a clue to the code and becomes heavily invested and then disappears. So the students that she was covering for in detention that day, years later, are trying to see what happened to her and if the code really does exist and in what way that might have been part of her demise. So that's the Twiford Code synopsis. Did enjoy this. I think it's just a fun mystery to kind of get lost in. I do like The Appeal slightly better, but still enjoyed this. Next up, we have a short story collection, and that is Where the Wild Ladies Are. This is by Aoko Matsuda, and it's translated from the Japanese by Barton, and it's published by Soft Skull Press. Now, I read this in the month of October, which is a month where I only seasonally read kind of spooky or spooky adjacent things. And this is a short story collection that centers around ghosts. So each story is supposed to feature a ghost in one way or another, sometimes a more modern take on a ghost. And these are linked, which I didn't know going into it, that they're interconnected. And I enjoyed that, but I would say this was very middling for me overall. I thought that a lot of the stories felt kind of flat for me and didn't have the emotional investment that I would be looking for, or that kind of like twisty payoff that I would be looking for in a short story. I really want it to pack a punch, and I think you can either do that like emotionally or with an interesting twist or reveal. And I didn't get any of that from this. It was just very like slice of life, but with a ghost in some ways. And it was talking about these themes of what are the invisible forces around you, hence the ghosts, that might influence your decisions or take a role in your identity or things like that. Almost like butterfly effect in a way. And that's intriguing, but it just didn't do enough for me. It didn't fully go there for me. So yeah, kind of fell flat, was so-so. Then we have The Girl from Widow Hills by Miranda. This is published by Simon & Schuster. I also listened to this one on audio. I did a little bit of tandem reading, but most of it on audio. And I do think Miranda's books work really well in the audio format. They're pretty like straightforward thrillers, so you don't get lost in the sauce or anything like that. This one follows a woman who has changed her name and is trying to lead a very normal life because when she was a child, she was a part of a huge news story where she sleptwalked and was lost for 3 days and nobody could find her. And when they eventually found her, she was like in the storm drains and everyone was shocked that she had even survived, but she can't recall anything that happened during that time. So big news stories at the time. And she is trying to kind of get away from the spotlight of that event. She doesn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. She's gotten a lot of creepy contact from people around that. And for the 10-year anniversary, there was sort of a resurgence of journalists trying to seek her out and being kind of shady in the ways that they were doing it. So we get to present day, which is 20 years after the event. So it's now going to be the 20-year anniversary, and she's worried that people are going to start trying to find her again. So that's the premise of the novel. And there are some pretty good reveals in this. Some of them you can like see the direction that they're going, but you don't know the specifics, and I really enjoy that. I do think that of the Mirandas that I've read, this is one of the weaker ones. Some of the other ones that I've read, I've enjoyed more, but still definitely will consistently pick her up. My mother-in-law often sends me her books because my mother-in-law really enjoys her. So I'll still continue to pick these up. They're very like stable, reliable thrillers for me. And a lot of them are in this like first person narration it's just simple to listen to, and there's something about that that's very soothing. So that is The Girl from Widow Hills. And then we have 2 romance books that are a part of the series, and that is the Hex series by Jessica Clare. The first one is Go Hex Yourself, and the second one is What the Hex. These are published by Penguin. I think specifically Berkeley is the imprint of Penguin that they're published by. And I really enjoyed both of these. I was reading this while we were on vacation in Texas, and I buddy read this with my friend Kat, who I was visiting for part of that trip. And we really enjoyed it. I think it's not my favorite romance of all time, but it was definitely fun, really seasonally integrated. And it is about a woman who is applying for a job for what she believes is a spellcraft card game that she is very into, and she desperately needs a job. She's really strapped for money. Her parents are kind of assholes and take advantage of her and have put her in debt, and she really wants this job. When she arrives, it slowly starts getting revealed that she is applying for an assistant to a witch. So basically she's applying to be a familiar. And she, in the beginning, is like, this is a joke, but like, I really need the money, so I'll play make-believe with this witch. And then it slowly comes out that it's real. And that's the initial setup of the story. And the romance is between her and the witch that she's working for's nephew, who is very grumpy. It's a grumpy sunshine romance. And yeah, overall really enjoyed it. There were a few things that I didn't like with Grumpy Sunshine, if the guy is the grumpy one, sometimes I'm like, okay, you're just kind of being an asshole. Like, it's not cute grumpy, you're just being mean, and I don't like that. But then as soon as it kind of shifts over to like, okay, he's being nice, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna forget the first part ever happened and go with the flow. But I really don't like that. I wish that they could make them have tension without someone being problematic, but that's, I think, something that can come up a lot and you just maybe need to suspend your disbelief for. But really did enjoy it overall. And this one I enjoyed even more. This follows another kind of witch and familiar partnership. So this woman has been waiting to be a familiar for a very long time, and her kind of ticket has never come up. And this guy is a witch, but he's been banned from having a familiar because he's gotten in trouble for doing something. And he needs a familiar. I'm not going to get into the magic system. And so she decides to work for him kind of under the table to finally get her shot. And they end up having a romance together. I really love this one. This one had so much action in it. It also had this like mystery plot going on at the same time. And I enjoyed the romance even more between the two of them. I thought it was like more fun and less problematic to get into. So for that reason, I really, really enjoyed this one. But overall, I enjoyed both and would highly recommend. Who doesn't want some witchy romance vibes in the month of October? And then last up for the month, we have Mostrilio. This is by Gerardo, Samano, Cordova, and it's published by Zando. And this one I really enjoyed. It is about a couple who loses their son at a very early age, and there is some folklore around the idea of preserving a piece of their body, and if you feed it, it might grow into something. And so the wife of the couple decides to take a portion of her son's lung and starts feeding it, and it turns into this creature called Mostrilio. And I think the formatting of this book works very well for what it's trying to do. It's told in 4 parts, and each part is a different perspective. So the first part is from the perspective of the mother, then it's the perspective of the best friend of the couple, who also is kind of in love with the mother and best friends with the dad. And they're all kind of aware of this. So the second part follows her. Her name is Lena. And then the third part follows the father. And then the last part follows Mostrilio. And I think the progression of how we pick up at exactly where the last section left off, but just with a new narrator. And I think that's really interesting. You get to keep all of the pacing of the novel with the different perspectives getting added in. And I thought that worked really well. Each perspective is unique and added something to the story as a whole. But again, we didn't lose any of that good momentum with the plot. And I think this is a really interesting take on grief. I know that's what a lot of people are saying about it, but I think that's what it's trying to do. And so it's a worthy thing to note about the book, that it is sort of grappling with this idea of grief and loss and how that can kind of like move through you. And it's also grappling with this idea of acceptance. Like, can you ever truly accept that type of a loss? And how do you come to grips with letting something go? So all of that, very, very interesting. I think it does exactly what it's trying to do, and I would highly recommend to pick this book up. It's so good, it's so smart, and I really enjoyed the reading process. So that is Mostrilio. And those are the books that I read in the month of October. Please tell me if you have read any of these books, and if so, what you thought of them, and let me know what you read in the month of October. Very curious to hear what you all are reading, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.